This video is sponsored by OWC.
The Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro is officially available and should be arriving to customers who pre-ordered later on this week. And I've been using the phone for the last week or so, and I have been taking a bunch of pictures and videos, and I wanted to compare this phone right here, which is the Pixel 6 Pro, to the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And hopefully you guys can comment down below what you think of each picture as this video is going along. Let me know your thoughts, and maybe they are in line with what I've been thinking. But yeah, my favorite thing to do with new Pixel phones is test out the cameras, because overall, over the last few years, they've been some of my favorite phones that I've liked to use specifically for taking pictures. And so yeah, let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are so far about this front-facing camera test, the audio quality, the video quality, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more videos, including a full comparison between these two phones.
All right, so let's not waste any more time. Let's just jump into camera samples. And most of the pictures that are taken on the main camera sensor, which is the wide angle lens for both devices, unless otherwise noted here in text. All of these photos are just standard point and shoot. There were no other picture styles or profiles or editing done to either picture. And right off the bat, you're going to notice some pretty crazy color profiles going on here at certain times. The Pixel 6 Pro appears warmer and more natural than the iPhone 13, again, at certain times, which is crazy because usually in other camera tests, the iPhone carries that more natural and slightly warmer look. So you'll notice this a lot more when you're looking at pictures of like the sky or the clouds or just landscapes in general. The more natural look and how it's supposed to look, or how it looked in the moment when I was taking those pictures, was what you see here on the Pixel 6 Pro. But again, this wasn't always the case. Some photos, the colors were pretty similar to each other. Another thing you'll notice are the highlights and the shadows. The iPhone images are kind of crushing the blacks a bit, and the Pixel is going the other way and exposing everything much more, but not in a bad way. They're not overexposing anything. It's just exposing it more than what you see here on the iPhone. It's giving you a bit of a sharper image too because of this, but it's really going to depend on what your preference is here overall, because I don't think the sharpness quality is that drastic compared to the iPhone, but there is a different look. So yeah, from a standard point and shoot type scenario with the normal wide angle main lens here, these photos are kind of a pick your poison or your personal preference. For me, it's kind of a 50-50 split. I don't want to make it seem like I'm copping out here, but it really is just kind of a 50-50. You know, I can pick either one and they're fine for me. The ultra wide angle lenses are also both a toss up for me. You're not going to notice that big of a difference with either camera as well. But I do want to briefly touch on the telephoto lens. Both phones have a telephoto lens, but the iPhone comes in at a 3x optical zoom and the Pixel is a bit more at 4x. Now, for me, I noticed that the Pixel telephoto lens was sometimes producing sharper images than the iPhone, but the Pixel does appear to be struggling with other light sources, and it gives a bit more flare than the iPhone. So there's a lot of weird, artifacting and flares going on. So while some of these other LED signs here in this image might be a bit sharper in quality on the Pixel, the flare can be a bit overpowering. This also is actually a problem for both phones across all lenses, but it's much more heavily amplified on the Pixel 6 Pro at times, and obviously more so in night where there are unnatural light sources, just like lights in the background. You'll notice it just becomes a little bit distracting. Speaking of night mode photos, this is where I was a bit disappointed with the Pixel 6 Pro. Usually I'm incredibly impressed and was hoping for a huge leap this year, but that didn't really happen. I think both images tend to look really good, but I'm noticing not as much of a leap as what I was expecting. I don't know why I was expecting a bigger leap, but I just was. Some cases the advantage leaning in the Pixel's favor, but that just wasn't really the case. So take this picture of my daughter here indoors at a restaurant. It's a little bit darker here. So I snapped a quick night mode photo, and it shows us a little bit more of the ceiling, and generally where there's some darker spots of the picture in the background here with the Pixel 6, you see a bit more, which is good, but the image quality is not nearly as good as the iPhone on this one. Even though the iPhone is still crushing the shadows with night mode turned on, I just think the image turned out better with this one. Here in this haunted drive-through thing that we went on, you'll just see how much the iPhone 13 has really caught up with the Pixel in terms of night mode. I think both images look pretty good, but the lights in the background of the Pixel 6 Pro, especially in this scarecrow image here, is adding some of those weird flares, and I just see that the image for the iPhone is just a bit sharper overall. This one here with the skeletons is another interesting one because the night mode on the Pixel 6 Pro is amplifying, the areas that are dark, which is what night mode is supposed to do. It's amplifying everything though. And so I would say that that's a good thing, but the iPhone 13 was able to get the main part of the subject. It recognized what you were trying to take a picture of, and then it just kind of crushed the shadows of the background, leading to what's probably a more interesting photo. It's really personal preference, I think, on this one, but I like the iPhone 13 a bit more with night mode, and I think it's finally getting the better of Google here when it comes to night mode. Now, portrait mode, on the other hand, for me, not so much the iPhone. The Pixel 6 Pro really takes it home here. It all comes down to a few specific photos for me, starting with this one. The bokeh or depth of field, just the background blur, however you want to describe it, is just incredible. It's so sharp and does such a great job with the lights that it really makes the subject kind of pop off the screen when you're looking at it on your phone or here even on this computer or whatever you're watching this video on. For me, when I was looking it back on the phone, I was like, wow, this is popping off the screen. And don't get me wrong, I think the iPhone looks incredible too. Both images are good photos, but these portrait images coming from the Pixel just look a lot better to me. Even with edge detection. Now, they both struggle in certain scenarios, but the iPhone 13 Pro has a dedicated LiDAR scanner for this specific reason so that it does a better job, and the Pixel 6 was able to keep up, if not be better at times. So, take this Cleveland sign, for example. It's admittedly a weird thing to try and capture in portrait mode on a phone, and the iPhone just kind of struggled and gave up in certain aspects. The Pixel 6 Pro did a great job at recognizing that I wanted the script of the Cleveland sign here to be in focus with the rest in the background, and that wasn't an easy task, and it did a pretty good job, especially when you compare it to the iPhone's image. Now, what I was referring to earlier about them both struggling at the same, areas, this image is a specific example of that, mostly on the ring of his finger and the phone, but it's really only noticeable if you start really zooming in on that specific area. It's not perfect, but again, you really need to start pixel peeping on both images. I just think that the image processing with Google and its Pixel lineup is still a bit further ahead when it comes to these portrait mode photos, but Apple has certainly caught up a little bit these days. It's just still not there for me. Now, speaking of catching up, Google has usually been kind of trash with video. I'm just gonna come out and be blunt with it. It's just hasn't really been good. The stills were so good for so many years, I kind of felt like Google really just put a lot of emphasis on still photos and didn't care a whole lot with video until now. The Pixel 6 Pro finally has a viable video camera on board, and it does a great job at stabilization and just overall image quality, color accuracy, etc. But honestly, there's really nothing that comes close these days in terms of video recording on a phone when it comes to the iPhone and its video capabilities. Apple even added a cinematic mode this year across the entire lineup. So no matter what phone you get, it has this mode on it, and it's something you can't do on a Pixel. And it just makes videos look so good at times, but I don't want to take it away from the work that Google has done with its video capabilities, so hats off to them. But in terms of video, it's just still not there yet compared to the iPhone. One last little tidbit before I wrap up. Google does have one little cool trick up its sleeve that you can't necessarily do on an iPhone, at least built in. You could probably find some apps out there that'll help you with this, but it's something called Magic Eraser, where you can basically pull up a photo and Google will use its processing power from its Tensor chip and its software to determine what objects you can erase from pictures to make them look better. It'll give you suggestions and then you just one tap and boom, it's removed. Or you can use your finger to highlight or circle a specific area or object that you want to remove. It works surprisingly well at times, especially if you're picking something that Google has recognized on its own. Obviously, it can do a good job, but even with the things that I've picked, it's done a pretty good job at removing those background distractions. So yeah, that's pretty much it right now. I still really love the Pixel cameras, and I think this year, these phones are really closer than ever. I think I leaned more towards the Pixel 6 Pro at times for still images, and when you take into consideration that the Pixel 6 Pro starts at $100 less at $899, if you're just looking for the best camera system on a really good, high-end flagship phone, it's kind of hard to beat. But again, it's going to come down to a whole lot of other things for people, I'm sure. And if you want to see a full comparison between each device and not just the cameras, but everything overall, please let me know in those comments down below. But of course, I'd love to know your thoughts on all of these pictures, which one you liked. Please let me know in those comments. Now, before we end today's video, I do want to give you more information about today's sponsor, OWC. With new MacBook Pros being officially released to the public, OWC wanted to highlight its ever-growing catalog of fantastic accessories for MacBook Pros, like its super fast slate of drives, like its Envoy Pro, Electron, and SX SSDs, both of which are super fast, rugged, and perfect to pair with any MacBook really, but especially the new MacBook Pros, as well as some of its Thunderbolt docks and hubs. Even though Apple has added some ports back to its machines, you can still never have too many available. So my recommendation is to check out the OWC Thunderbolt dock, which comes with 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports and 4 USB ports, as well as the ability to connect either 2 4K displays or a 5, 6, or 8K display. Or if you wanted something a bit more mobile, I recommend checking out the Thunderbolt Hub, which gives you extra USB-C, USB-A, and other ports that one might need in a smaller form factor. And for more information about any of these products, or more information about OWC in general, visit the link in the description down below. This has been Dan with Mac Rumors. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you around in the next video.